Yeah. Hi, Ranjan. Could you please explain what are the differences between Spring and Spring Boot?
Okay. First difference is Spring is developer configure. Developer itself, he is going to configure all about the bin and all these things. In Spring Boot, auto configure feature is there, and also some embedded databases and embedded servers provided by Spring Boot. In case of Spring, we need to configure ourselves only, and we can develop microservice using Spring Boot. In Spring case, it is not possible.
Anything else?
Yes, sir. A Spring Boot provides embedded servers like Tomcat, JT, and Node, but Spring can't provide features like that.
Okay.
And
we
even automatically provide the containers also, because in Spring Framework we need to create the application context, but here we don't need to create any container.
Sir, and automatic bin creation is done. Automatic dependency performed done.
In Spring Framework, we are performing the manual wiring. In Spring Boot, by default, it is a auto wiring. We can perform that.
And Spring Boot also provides the annotations which Spring doesn't provide us. So so the complex of the code gets reduced in Spring Boot as compared to Spring.
And one more thing, a Spring Boot provides lots of starter in the form of dependency that is not provided by Spring like that.
And as well as here we have to perform on the actuator. By using this actuator, we can check the application status like the health metrics. So when compared to Spring Framework, here we can we have to see the many features like DAO tools and actuator, and a few of them also there.
Okay.
So main thing is that Spring Boot also internally using Spring. We can say that simply Spring Boot is Spring ++. Some additional services they provide us.
Okay.
So Spring Boot is
Spring Boot avoid
not
XML
separate
configurations.
framework. On top of the Spring Framework only, we have to develop the Spring Boot framework.
And even
same applications we can develop in Spring Boot.
And also, sir, there is no XML configuration in Spring Boot, but we have XML configuration in Spring.
Okay, good.
I think initially
by default uses application context.
Okay.
And centralized version control system is there. Means we are using 2.7 means what required other compatibility dependency also provided by Spring Boot only. In Spring case, we need to provide ourselves only each and every dependency.
And one more difference is that if we are going with the Spring Boot, they provide automatically a standalone application. If we are creating a Spring Boot application, but this feature is not available with the Spring
IO initializer.
Yes. So a standalone application by default provided by Spring Boot.
So if you use the Spring Boot framework, majorly we can support from Java 8 onwards. So from our Java JDK should be supported the Java 8 only. We must and should we have to minimum this requirement.
Okay. All right, good guys. So we understood what is Spring Framework and what is Spring Boot. So Spring is used to develop our applications. On top of the Spring Boot came into picture. In the Spring Boot, lot of advantages are available, like no XML configurations, form starters, and actuators, embedded servers, auto configuration. Lot of things that we need to do manually in the Spring Framework, they avoided in the Spring Boot with this auto configuration feature. Nowadays, the applications are developing by using Spring Boot. Spring Boot is the most recommended approach to develop microservices and REST APIs. By using this Spring Boot, we can develop standalone applications. We can develop production grade applications. We can develop mobile applications also, web applications and mobile applications also. The thing is, in the Spring, lot of things manually we need to do, whereas in the Spring Boot, they have provided auto configuration for that functionality. So that's why people are preferring the Spring Boot to develop the applications nowadays. That's it. Good. Yeah. Apart from this, any questions, anybody?
Sir, after complete the class, video also automatically uploaded, right?
Which class?
No. After complete our class, so automatically it will be upload the class video record.
Video will be uploaded in the 24 hours of time. We told you in the demo session also, it will take 20, sometimes it will be uploaded on the same day. Sometimes it may take 24 hours time to upload because
not an issue because we have to refer that class once again. That is the
that is I told you that now video will be uploaded within 24 hours of time.
Okay, no issue.
Sir, how Spring Boot is different from other frameworks like Node.js and latest frameworks? What are the advantages of Spring Boot?
Sir, Node.js, so that I don't have any idea on the Node.js. So basically,
sir, comparing like other also like .NET framework, that can be also used for developing microservices. But how Spring is better?
Yeah, so I mean, to be frank, I don't have any idea on the .NET framework also, sir. So by using them also we can develop the applications, but I'm not sure whether this service registry, admin server, client, and all this stuff is available or not. I'm not sure. I'm not aware of that .NET functionalities.
Okay.
Okay.
Sir, actuators examples. Can we do a simple example on actuators?
Sir, to do the actuator example, we need to create a web application, sir. In the web MVC, we are going to do that.
Okay, right.
Sir, in runners, we explained that something we need to initialize something, we can do for runners. Is there anything once before shutting out the Spring Boot application, can we do something like closing the database connection or do some work? Is there anything alternative?
No, sir. So here runners will execute when the application is getting started. So if you want to do something when the application is getting stopped, there is no option in that. In the Spring Boot did not provide any option for that.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, I have a doubt regarding parent POM, sir. Parent starter.
Yeah, parent starter. I will explain you the parent starter.
Yes, sir. How exactly it is working? And another second question is, if I want to add my own starters, what are the procedures I need to follow?
Yes, I will explain how to add your own starter, customizing your starters, right? Yes, I will cover that concept.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions, anyone? Did you refer all the questions that we discussed? The interview questions from the Spring Boot. I think already I have given you 26 interview questions for that Spring and Spring Boot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they have already uploaded in the notes also.
Yes, sir. And all are interview questions, sir. All are asking in an interview.
Yeah. This what is the Spring Boot version history advantage.
Spring Boot, sir, features.
Spring Boot creation, folder structure, start class, what is boot application, what is component scanning, what is base package naming convention, what is Spring application.run method, what is IOC container, which class will be used to start IOC container in the Spring Boot, what is the return type of run method, what is a banner, what is a runner, what is properties file in the Spring Boot, what is a dependency injection, and what type of dependency injection we can perform in the Spring Boot. What is bean scope? What is auto wiring? What are the modes available for auto wiring? What is bean lifecycle? How to represent the Java class as a Spring Bean? Okay. What is the difference between component and bean annotations? What is dependency injection? Which dependency injection is better? Component versus service versus repository annotations. All these things we have discussed. And the next one is, there is one question that they will ask you. What is @value annotation? What is @value annotation? Guys, any idea What is @value annotation?
Yes, sir. When we are read the value to in properties file through the properties file, we can
I want
use
to inject some value from the properties file to my Java class variable. Then we will go for this @value annotation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you see here in this application, report service is available. In the report service, I want to take one value from the properties file. So here I'm taking a variable private string type. Okay. So this variable I want to initialize. So this variable value I'm going to configure in the properties file. Main resources application.properties file is available. Here I'm going to specify report.type is equal to some Excel. Okay, I'm configuring a property in the properties file that is report.type. Report.type is equal to Excel. Now go to report service. I want to inject that value to this variable. That means what this variable should hold the value as Excel. Take that from the properties file and store into that variable. For that, we will go for @value annotation. So that is $T. Value is one annotation I'm writing. Now here, yeah, I'm writing system.out.println report to type. System.out.println report type.
Hello, sir.
One more annotation, primary annotation also some people's asking.
Primary, I already explained that, right? Yeah. Report to type, I'm using @value annotation. Report to type value. What type of value will come to that? Let us observe. Go to our start class. In the start class, I'm getting the object for the service bean, and I'm calling the name of the, I'm calling the service bean method. When that method is called, it will print the value of the type variable. Currently, am I initializing the type variable or I'm not initializing the type variable? Am I initializing that variable or I'm not initializing that? In the program, I am not initializing that. I'm using @value annotation. So right click, run as boot application. Right click, run as boot application. Let us see that value is getting initialized or not. Are you able to get that value as Excel? From where this value is coming, guys? From where this value is coming?
From properties file.
Properties file.
Properties
From
file.
properties
Yes,
file.
from
Yeah.
properties file.
How I am loading the data from the properties file to my Java class?
By using the value annotation.
By using @value
annotation.
Yeah, by using @value annotation, we are reading the data from properties file to our Java class. Some people may ask you this also. What is value annotation in the Spring? It can be used in the Spring as well as in the Spring Boot also. All right. Another important question here is, guys, in Spring Boot, we can use. Sir, tell me.
बोलिए. बोलिए.
Right, guys. Now here in the Spring Boot, we can use application.properties file, or we can use application.yml file also. Application.properties file and application.yml file. Right? What is the difference between application.properties file and application.yml file? So the first thing is properties file is used to configure. Properties file is used to configure the properties in linear structure. Properties file is used to configure properties in the linear structure. YML file is used to configure the properties in the hierarchical structure. YML file is used to configure properties in hierarchical structure. They are used to configure the properties in the hierarchical structure. For example, if I want to configure server port, I'm going to take server.port is equal to 8080. Like this, in the properties file, we are going to configure the properties in the linear structure. Whereas in the YML file, we will configure the properties in the hierarchical structure. What is the meaning of that? So here we are going to configure server : port, server colon port 8080. Here we are going to write server dot port is equal to 8080. Here we are going to write server colon. In the next line, we will write the port. Here some space will be available. That space is called as indent space. Now, if you see in this properties file, if I want to configure database properties, I'm going to write like this: spring dot data source dot username. I need to configure some username like this: spring dot data source dot username, spring dot data source dot URL or password. Okay, I'm going to configure some password like this. So spring dot data source dot URL, some value. Spring dot data source dot driver class name. Okay, let me take it as com dot mysql dot jdbc dot driver. Here jdbc colon mysql colon localhost mysql jdbc colon mysql colon localhost colon 3306/db. All right. Like this, we are going to configure data source properties in the properties file. Spring dot data source dot username, spring dot data source dot password, spring dot data source dot URL, spring dot data source dot driver class. So here, if you see, spring data source is common for every property. So this is a linear structure. How to configure same thing in the YML file? So instead of a properties file, you can use a YML file also. Let me create a file with a name called application.yml. Let me create a file with a name called application.yml. So in the application.yml, how to configure the properties. So already we have seen how to configure the properties in the properties file. 1 minute, guys. All right, guys. So in the properties file, we are writing spring.datasource.username. So spring.datasource.password. Same thing if you want to do in the YML, then how we are going to do it. In the YML, we will represent the properties in the hierarchical structure. So here, I'm going to specify spring colon. Inside the spring, we are having data source. Spring.data source. Spring.data source. Inside the data source, we are having URL. Okay, we are having username, we are having password, we are having driver class. So like this, we are going to configure the properties in the YML. YML stands for yet another markup language. YML, nothing but yet another markup language. YML is also called as a YAML. You can use the extension as .yml or .yaml. Properties file is used to configure the properties in the form of key value, but properties file will configure the data in the linear structure, whereas YML files are more readable. So if you see spring.data source, which is repeated for every property. But when you go for YML, spring available, inside the spring data source available, inside the data source URL is available. It is the meaning of spring.datasource.url, spring.datasource.username, spring.datasource.password, spring.datasource.driver class. So like this, we can configure data source properties in the YML file. Okay, guys. So here, whenever we are writing this, you cannot write the data source in the first line. If you keep everything in the first place, right, without spaces, then this YML file will understand everything is one property. So here everything is not one property. This data source, password, username, URL are belongs to data source. Data source belongs to Spring. So we need to maintain that the spacing. The spaces are very important when we are working with YML file. These spaces are called as indent spaces. Whatever the spaces we are writing here, these spaces are called as indent spaces in the YML. Indent spacing is very important in the YML. Suppose, for example, I want to configure banner mode in the Spring Boot. Now, how we will do? Spring.main.banner mode is equal to off. Already I have written the Spring. Once again, I am writing the Spring here. Spring.data source, Spring.main. But when it comes to here, Spring is already available. We no need to write the Spring once again. If you see Spring.main.banner mode is equal to off. See here, inside the Spring, data source available. Inside the Spring, main is available. Spring.data source, Spring.main.banner mode. So which one is more readable, guys? Properties file is more readable. YML files are more readable. Come on. Property files are more readable. YML files are more readable. YML files are more readable. So in the Spring Boot, earlier, people used to work with the properties files. Nowadays, people are working with YML files. Property files are used to configure properties in the linear structure. YML files are used to configure properties in the hierarchical structure. Now, property files supported by only Java. Properties files are used only in Java language. YML files are universal. YML files are universal. Not only in the Java, YML files will be used in the Kubernetes, YML files will be used in the Python, YML files will be used in the other programming languages also. Property files will be used only in the Java language, whereas YML files are used only in the, property files will be used only in the Java language, whereas YML files will be used in the other programming languages also. Are you guys clear? Spring Boot supports for properties file as well as YML file also. Now guys, if you see in the Spring Boot, YML auto suggestions will be available. Spring.application.name. When I type spring.application.name, when I give the control space and enter, automatically it is adjusting that space. That space is called indent space. So Spring is one main property. Inside that Spring property, data source property available. Inside the data source, we have the 4 sub properties. In data source, main, application. These are the child properties for the Spring. Inside the Spring, data source available, main available, application available. Inside the data source, URL, username, password, driver class available. Inside the main, banner mode is available. Inside the application, name is available. All right. Suppose if I want to configure application name, again I need to write spring.application.name. So how many times I'm writing the Spring here? 6 times I'm writing the Spring in the properties file. 6 times I'm writing the Spring in the properties file, whereas in the YML file, I'm writing that Spring only 1 time. So this is hierarchical representation and this is linear representation. So property file is used to configure properties in the linear structure. YML file is used to configure properties in the hierarchical structure. YML stands for yet another markup language. Property files are used only in the Java language. YML files are universal, supported by YML files are universal. YML files are supported. YML files used by several programming languages. YML files will be used by several programming languages. Note, indent spacing is very important in the YML file. Indent spaces are very important in YML files. In the interview, they will ask you, what is the difference between properties file and YML file? YML stands for yet another markup language. And one more difference is that we'll discuss in the coming classes, guys. Profiles concept is available. Profiles nothing but multiple databases. Dev database, SIT database, UAT. So when we have multiple databases, where for every database, one separate properties file should be created. Okay. So if we have, for every database in the properties file, in properties, for every database profile, for every profile, separate properties file should be created. Separate properties file should be created. How we are going to create a separate properties file? Application underscore dev dot properties and application underscore QA dot properties. Application underscore production dot properties. Like this, we need to configure. In YML, multiple profiles can be configured in single YML file. So if you have multiple profiles in your project, multiple profiles, nothing but for every environment, dev environment will be available, QA environment will be available, production environment will be available in the project. So for every profile, we need to create a separate file in the properties, dev properties, QA properties, production properties, like that. But when you go for YML, multiple profiles can be configured in single YML. 3 hyphens will be used. 3 hyphens will be used to separate profile. 3 hyphens will be used to separate profile in YML. So if you go for the properties file, for every profile, one properties file should be created. But if you go for YML, within one YML, multiple profiles can be configured. How to separate one profile with the another profile? By using 3 hyphens, we are going to separate one profile with the another profile. This is another difference between properties file and YML file. Spring Boot supports both the properties files and YML files, but mostly people are using YML files nowadays for the configuration. Properties and YML files are used for configuring configuration properties. Application.properties and application.yml files are used to manage configuration properties in the application. So like example, data source properties, for example, application data source properties, application SMTP properties, and application messages, success messages, failure messages, etc. So instead of hard coding the messages in the Java program, we are going to configure our messages, data source properties, SMTP properties, application messages in the properties file or YML. Spring Boot will support for both properties files and YML files also. So properties file is used to configure the properties in the linear format, in the linear structure like this. So server.port number 8080, something like this. Data source properties in the linear manner, we are going to configure the properties in the properties file. Like this, we are going to configure. Whereas when you go for the YML file, in the YML file, we will configure the properties in the hierarchical structure. We are going to configure the properties in the hierarchical structure like this. Now, YML files are more readable. YML files are human readable as well as system readable. Okay, so in the indents in the YML file, spacing is very important. Suppose if I don't give this spacing for the main, what will happen? Is it valid YML or it is invalid YML now? For the main, before the main, I'm not giving any space. If I don't give any space before the main, then what will happen? Before the main, if I am not giving the space, what will happen? Before the main, if I am not giving the space, then what is going to happen? It will consider that main is a separate property. But main is a separate property or main is a child property for the Spring property. Main is a child property for the Spring property. Okay, so there should be some indent space for the main. That indent spacing is very important in the application.yml file. Are you getting my point, guys? Are you getting my point? Main is the child property of the Spring. So we need to write the YML properties like this. We need to write the YML properties like this. Property files are used only in the Java. Other programming languages will not use the properties files. Property files are supported only in the Java language. YML files used by several other programming languages. Indent spaces are very important in the YML file. In properties, for every profile, separate properties file should be created, like dev properties, QA properties, prod properties. In YML, multiple profiles can be configured in the single YML. 3 hyphens will be used to separate profiles in the YML. So Spring Boot supports both properties files and YML files, but YML files are recommended than properties. Spring Boot supports both .properties and .yml files also. Spring Boot supports both properties and YML. Recommended to use YML files. Recommended to use .yml files. So YML is a new concept to manage our configurations. .properties is the old approach to manage our configurations. Are you guys clear with my point? What is the difference between the properties file and application YML? Application properties and application YML. Both are used to manage configurations in the project. Configuration properties we are going to configure there, like data source properties, SMTP properties, and application messages we are going to configure. Properties file is used to configure properties in the linear structure, like this spring.datasource.username. Multiple times we are writing spring.datasource, spring.datasource, spring.datasource. YML file is used to configure properties in the hierarchical structure. Spring data source, URL, username, password, driver class, banner mode, and all. Properties files are used only in the Java language. YML files used by several programming languages. Indent spaces are very important in the YML files. In properties, for every profile, separate properties file should be created. Application dev, application QA, application prod. In YML, multiple profiles can be configured in the single YML. 3 hyphens will be used to separate that profile. 3 hyphens will be used to separate that profile. Good. This is also one of the important interview question for the Spring people. What are the differences between application.properties file versus application.yml? Application.properties versus application.yml. So Spring supports both properties files and YML files also. And you have another advantage here, guys. Let me delete my YML file. I have deleted my YML file in the project. I have deleted my YML file in the project. I have the properties file. When I create the boot application, by default, this properties file only will be created. Now I have deleted this properties file from the project. So in the Spring Toolsuite IDE, we can convert the properties file to YML file directly. So see here, observe carefully, all of you. I am right-clicking on the properties file. When I right-click on the properties file, can you see this option? Convert .properties to .yml. So YML, YAML are both are same. File extension can be YML or it can be YAML also. File extension can be YML or it can be YAML also. Convert .properties to .yml. Convert .properties to .yml. So directly we can convert the properties file to YML, then it will adjust the syntax according to YML. Right click on the properties, convert to properties to YML. Click on OK. Now see here, my properties file is converted to YML. Open the YML, syntax is adjusted or not. Properties file syntax is converted to YML syntax or not. In the Spring Toolsuite, we have this option. In the Spring Toolsuite, we have this option. Okay, so if you have a properties file, that properties file can be converted into YML file also. You have a properties file, that properties file can be converted into YML file also. Are you guys clear? Now, once we have the YML, do we have the option to convert the YML file back to properties file? Do we have the option to convert that? No, we don't have that. We don't have that. If you have a properties file can be configured, can be converted into YML file. Are you guys clear with my point? Yeah, perfect. So with this, we understood another important point in the Spring Boot, that is properties file and YML, that is famous interview question. All right, so we are good. Somebody is asking, sir, can I give the properties in the runtime? What is the meaning of giving the properties in the runtime? What is value annotation? I already explained. Value annotation is used to read the data from the properties file or YML file. Report to type I have given as Excel. It is equal to report.type. So when you run this application, I'm creating the object for report service class. And in this class, I'm injecting @value, report.type. Where is the report.type? It is available in the YML file. Let's go and run this application. Run as boot application. Report type is Excel. So whatever the value is available in the YML, if you want to load this value from this YML file to your Java class variable, you can go for @value. Are you clear? Okay, very good. Someone is asking, sir, how to change this properties file in the runtime? So if you cannot change the properties in the runtime, sir, so whenever you change a property, you need to restart your server. So in the real time also, whenever a property is changed, server restart is required, because the properties will be loaded at the time of application startup. So once the application is started, if your property is changed, then your server restart is required. Your server restart is required. Got it? Now, in the Spring Boot, embedded servers are available. Whenever we run the application, it will deploy in the embedded server. Whenever we make the changes, automatically it will reload the changes. So in the web application, we will understand what is server, what is server restart, how server restart will happen. Dev tools, what is the dev tools in the Spring Boot? When we add the dev tools in the Spring Boot, server automatically will be restarted. In the web application development, we are going to learn all that stuff. In the web application development, we are going to learn all that stuff. All right, dev tools property, dev tools dependency is available. Whenever the code is modified, it is going to restart our server. Dev tools property is there. That is one of the POM starter that we are going to add in the pom.xml. Whenever server is available, it is going to restart our server. That is a dev tools. Dev tools property is available. Still, we are not developing the web application. We are still in the standalone. Once we go for web application, we will add the server, and I will show you how server will be restarted in the Spring Boot. Good. Fine. Spring Boot actuator. I told you in the web application, I will explain what is actuator. Because to understand the actuators, we need to know the web application development in the Spring Boot. Okay. In the web MVC, I will explain you about the actuators concept. In the Spring Web MVC module, I will explain about embedded server. I will explain about dev tools. I will explain about the actuators. All right, guys. Yeah, fine. So we have another 15-20 minutes. So I will start the new topic, that is data JPA, in the Monday session, guys. So today I'm not going to start that new topic. If you guys are having any questions related to today's topic, you can ask me.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
How we can stop any class auto configuration?
How can we stop auto configuration in the Spring Boot? That is default behavior, sir. We can't do that.
Some of interviewer will ask this question, sir.
How to, if you want to stop the auto configuration, then you need to remove that auto configurer dependency from the project.
No, sir. If you want to stop auto configuration, particular class, then sir.
You don't want to load that particular class.
Yes.
If you don't represent that class as a Spring Bean, it will not be loaded. No? If you create a Java class, if you don't write any Spring Bean and Spring annotations, right, that class will not be loaded. It will become a normal Java class. You need to create the object to use that class. If you represent that class as a Spring Bean, then only it will be considered as the class to managed by IOC container. Okay.
All the auto configuration codes present inside the starter from parent POM.
Yes, sir. Whatever the dependencies that are required for the Spring Boot, right, it will be available in the parent POM.
Sir, is there any reason for writing YML, YML?
YML, YAML, both are same, sir. The extension can be anything. It can be a YML or it can be YAML also, no problem.
I have a doubt.
Can we use .ym and .properties in the same?
Sorry?
Can we use both YML and .properties?
Yes, you can use both also, no problem.
Okay.
Sir, when we write YAML in STS, sir, if there is any errors, like as you were showing, would it show the errors, sir?
Yes, it will show the error.
Okay. And any advantage?
If you write the YML incorrect property in the YML, it will show you the error immediately.
Okay. So everything is an advantage in dot properties, sir. I don't see any advantage in YAML, right, sir?
YML advantage means it is more readable. Advantage means both are used to configure the properties only. The only advantage, it is more readable, easy to write it.
Yeah.
That is the only advantage. And when you have the profiles concept in the Spring Boot, you no need to write multiple properties, multiple YML files. With one YML, you can configure multiple profiles also.
Okay.
Profile means one environment configuration, like dev environment will have dev profile, QA environment will have QA profile, like that.
Okay, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Spring.factory, how help us in while running?
It will maintain all the classes which are required for the auto configuration.
Okay, list of classes.
Yeah, list of classes which are required for the auto configuration. When the project is started, it will load that factories file and it will load those classes.
Okay, our container, our run method is doing that.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, can you just once share the today's notes?
Okay.
I have one question. Sir, here yes, SMTP. Hello, sir. Can you just scroll up? Yes. SMTP properties. What is mean that, sir?
Simple mail transfer protocol. For sending emails, we need to configure email server details. To connect with the database, we are going to configure database properties. To send the emails, we need to configure email server properties. Email server properties are called as SMTP properties. Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, SMTP stands for, which are used to send the emails from our application.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Can you please go up one? Can you please go up? Can you please primary, right? We have. Can you please go primary? Not updated.
Yeah, I will write that. What is the primary annotation?
Yeah, can you explain that one also?
I already explained that, sir.
Okay.
Primary is used to identify the bean to perform the auto wiring. When there are multiple beans available to perform the dependency injection, then primary annotation will represent which bean to use to perform the auto wiring. If one
Qualifier
interface,
also, yeah.
Qualifier will identify based on the name of the bean. Primary is used to specify the directive particular class. By type, primary is used to perform the dependency injection based on the type. Qualifier is used to identify the dependent bean based on the name. I already explained this concept.
Okay.
Hi, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening. Good evening, sir.
Very good evening.
I mean, company, the recent, which one we mostly use? Which one have mostly used? YML or the properties file?
Now YML files people are using.
Okay.
Earlier, people used to work with only properties files, but now people are preferring YML files because YML is global.
Sir, I have one question from my side. We are writing the data source property in the YML. We are writing the profile for all those things. But how the communicate the profile for a Spring Boot application? Spring Boot application, how to
It will automatically load from the profile. It will automatically load from the YML. You no need to load that, right? It is a default file. When the boot application is started, by default, it will load the files which are available in the resources folder. If you have the properties file in the resources folder, it will load that properties file. If you have YML file in the resources folder, it will load that file.
But actually, sir, whenever we are deploying the application, we are not writing the data source property in the YML. We are providing the profile concept. But how my profile Spring Boot communicating with profile concept?
You need to activate the profile. So when the data JPA classes, I will explain about the profiles.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
The profile concept we have not discussed yet. No?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, Ashok sir, I have one question. I was recently facing some issue in my workplace. So there they have passed some VM arguments.
VM arguments means the arguments which we are supplying as input for the JVM.
Okay. So they are like configuration. They are doing some configurations. So where I can get some idea like how to do those things? Is there any resource you know?
No, we will cover the VM arguments.
Okay, great, sir. Thank you.
Hi, sir.
Yes.
Sir, if you have same properties is application.properties and YAML.properties, Spring Boot, which one will pick, sir?
Both, sir. Generally, we don't keep both now. Here, suppose assume that we are having application.yml, report type I'm having as Excel. Now I'm creating application.yml, application.properties file, application.properties, report.type is equal to PDF I'm giving. In the properties file, report type I'm giving as PDF. In the YML file, I'm giving the report type as Excel. So let us see which property it is going to pick. Which property it is picking? Excel. That means priority given to YML or priority given to properties?
YML.
When you have both properties files and YML file, Spring Boot will prefer YML file.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Sir.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in application.properties file, we used to write a key value pair. Key is or suppose report.type is the key and PDF is the value. So, sir, how can I know all the keys and what are the usage of all those keys?
Control space will give you all the keys here.
Okay.
These all are the keys that we can write in the Spring Boot.
And some general keys that we used to write in program or project, real-time project.
General keys are user defined. You can write any key as you want.
Okay, sir.
This report dot type is our normal key, right? That is user defined.
Yeah.
Sir, in properties file, we are using report.type is equal PDF and YML, Excel we have given, right? If you want to get Excel PDF, what we need to do, sir?
We should not write two properties. We should not write the same property in the two files. Okay.
Sir, normally we will give properties as well as the data source, username, password in the properties file. Then what is the safety of this one? Somebody changes in the production environment.
In the real time, we don't configure them in the project. In the real time, there is a concept called config server, which we can't access.
Okay. So we are not going to save the configure the data sources in the property.
While we are doing the development and testing, we will do it. But in the real production, we don't configure them in the YML file or properties file within the project. There will be a separate server where our configurations will be maintained in the real time. That is called config server.
Okay, so we are going to loan this one also. Okay,
yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sir, how long will it take, sir, to complete Spring Boot?
Next, we are going to start the data JPA. Data JPA will take 1 week of time. Then we will start with WebMVC, RESTful service, and microservices. Another 2 months it is going to take.
By March end, can we complete the Spring Boot, sir?
Right.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Sir, can we keep it in a different name, like instead of application dot properties? Can we give our custom name, like project name dot properties?
No, sir. Application is the default name which Spring Boot will use.
Okay, and it is case sensitive, right? Or you need to give all in the smaller case.
Right. You can't change that name. If you change that name, it is not going to load it.
Okay.
Because these resource files will be loaded by the Spring Boot by default. So it will search for the file with the same name. If you change the name, it can't understand that.
No, the case, I'm telling uppercase or lower case. It is case sensitive, right?
Case sensitive, yeah.
Okay.
Sir, if you write custom properties file, how can I get that detail, sir?
Sorry?
Suppose now application.properties is there, but if you write a different name instead of application.
That is what I'm telling you. You should not change the file name.
Oh.
Suppose if you use the different file, we need to explicitly specify in the application class, or it's mandatory to how to use application.
You need to use application or properties file. If you change the file name, you need to load that file manually. You need to write the code to read that file data. If you use application or properties or application or YML, by default, Spring Boot will read that data. Got it?
For those files, we have to load in the application class only, right?
Yes, you need to write your own logic to load those files.
Okay.
The Spring MVC also comes under Spring Boot?
Yeah, we are going to cover that. So in the syllabus document, I have given that MVC also.
No, sir, like when we are migrating project from Spring MVC to Spring Boot, so it is not under Spring Boot, no?
No, it will be under Spring Boot. I will tell you how to do that.
Okay, sir, thank you.
I'm telling you in the course, our course of Spring Boot also we are going to cover. I mean, Spring Web MVC also we are going to cover in our course.
So, will it come under Spring Boot?
Spring Boot will internally use Spring Web MVC to develop the web application. Okay, Web MVC, whatever is there, that will be used in the Spring Boot also with the web starter. It comes under Spring Boot. Yes, it will use that concept.
This course will cover the security and batch process also, right?
Yes.
Sir,
yeah.
Sir,
Security. OAuth comes under security. Batch process will be covered. Security will be covered. OAuth will be covered. JWT also will be covered.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Can you please
Hello, sir.
Sir, how will convert multiple properties file into YAML? Let's say we have different profile.
single YML you need to write. When I discuss profiles concept, I will explain that.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
Hello.
Yep.
Sir, for the REST API perspective, they asked one question: how to provide a security to REST API. So, can you
Yes.
cover that?
Just now I told you that, ma'am, security will be covered. You were asking the same question. I already answered that. Security will be covered. OAuth will be covered. JWT also will be covered. Okay.
Can you please cover multi-threading also? Sir,
Is multi-threading part of Spring Boot?
No.
Then first let us complete our syllabus, which I have promised in the document. Okay. So if you will ask multi-threading, somebody will ask collection, somebody will ask oops. So first, let's concentrate on our Spring Boot and REST APIs and microservices. Okay.
Sir, can we configure port number in YML file?
Yes, whatever the properties you configure in the properties file, same thing you can configure in the YML also.
Whatever we should write in properties file, is it predefined or we can write custom also?
Server colon port. Server colon port. You just create, server colon.
Not only port number, like we use data source, username.
Everything. Madam, that is what I told that now. Whatever you are configuring in the properties file now, you are configuring data source also in the YML. That is what I told you right today.
These are all predefined, right?
Yeah, custom property. This report type is a custom, right? It is not predefined. No?
Okay, got it.
Report type is a predefined or user defined. It is user defined.
Okay.
You can configure user defined property also.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir, what is this data source?
Data source, nothing but it will represent your database properties. Data source, Java x.sql data source, which will represent your database connections.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Tomorrow, do you have class or Monday to Saturday only you have class?
Monday to Saturday only we have class. Sunday is holiday for us because I need to take some rest, sir.
Yeah, okay, no issue. Just
we have next class on Monday. Monday, I will start with the data JPA. If anybody don't have the database installed, please install MySQL database in your system. We are going to develop the Spring Boot applications to communicate with MySQL database by using data JPA.
Before data JPA, any cover Hibernate somehow you?
No, sir. Directly, I'm going to show you data JPA. Whatever the ORM concept, I will explain in the data JPA.
If possible, can you just overview a little bit?
The data JPA is advanced than Hibernate, sir. Whatever the Hibernate concepts are there, same concepts we are going to use here. Okay.
Because in some entries they are asking the
in the interview they will ask in the interview they will ask you so many things. This course is not for Hibernate.
Yeah, that is just if possible. You have to just overview how
that is what I'm telling you. In the data JPA, I will cover the basic part of ORM. Hibernate concepts also will come under the data JPA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, for multi-threading nowadays by using Akka framework, can you please
sorry?
Little bit in Akka framework is there now, sir, for multi-threading.
Akka framework, I am not aware of that, sir. I know executor framework for multi-threading. Akka framework, I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, fine, guys. Good. So Spring Boot topics completed. We'll start with the data JPA from Monday. Please go through all those things and practice. These basics are very, very, very important for our upcoming sessions. We'll see you on Monday. Thank you, guys. Happy weekend.